But now for questions of a rather more erudite kind, as Gordon Clough and Louis Allen present another edition of Round Britain Quiz.
Hello, and this week we're approaching the halfway mark in this series of Round Britain Quiz with the arrival of the Midlands team. John Julius Norwich, better known as, I suppose, the 20th century answer to Thomas Otway. He discovered Venice, Otway preserved it. And Peter Oppenheimer, from Oxford normally, where he's a student of Christ Church, but temporarily advising the moguls, or possibly the molluscs, of Shell Petroleum. And we also have the London team.
Yes, the London team's that hard-to-beat pair. Irene Thomas, that svelte and bien moulu figure, and with her is the glass of fashion and the mould of form, Eric Korn, scientist, linguist, and colporteur extraordinary.
Ask him a question.
Why not? Let's see if he can do this one. A harmless winter creation that sounds appalling. A being that sounds like a chunk of Canada. Shorn of a Scottish lavatory, of course. Both mean roughly the same thing. What is it?
Lewis says that both these mean roughly the same thing. He wants to know what it is. A harmless winter creation that sounds appalling. A being that sounds like a chunk of Canada shorn of a Scottish lavatory. Shorn is spelled S-H-O-R-N.
So far.
It sounds like a novel, doesn't it? Shorn of the Scottish lavatory.
Yes.
A tale for boys.
That's right. Yes. Heroes of Scotland, 1685.
I don't know if we can use that title,
No.
but still.
What about this harmless winter creation? What do you make in the winter? A snowman.
That's
is
one
it
of the things you
harmless or
might make.
harmless? Yes, okay. An appalling snowman must be an abominable snowman.
Yes.
Right, let's think of some more abominable snowmen
If
that
you-
sound like chunks of Canada.
If you think of a monster in Canada, he gets called something else, doesn't he?
Well, there's a
What's it?
Bigfoot.
Yes, a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch. Or
Sasquatch.
is he an
could it-
abominable snowman?
Could it? Yes, indeed. Well, he's a man in a gorilla suit, actually, frequently photographed going out. And there's one notorious millimetre of film that shows 5 frames or whatever of this creature or this person. It's like, I'd probably be sued if I say it's a man in a gorilla suit.
I think we believe him absolutely implicitly in
Yeah,
this
he's
chap,
got
Eric.
a
You know.
zip
Anyway.
fastener at the back of his suit, yes.
But how does Sasquatch become a chunk of Canada?
Wow, Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan.
Yes, it's a bit tortuous, but push us in that direction.
Is it Saskatchewan?
It is indeed
Oh,
Saskatchewan.
good. So
You haven't told me why it's shorn of a Scottish lavatory, though.
Yes, now, the Scots have a lot of words for these things, don't they? Like the byre and the midden.
Well, the bit that he's shorn it of is
Yeah.
Iwan, but
Ewan.
Iwan doesn't. Well, Ewan is not the same
A
name
lot
as
of decent
Jake, is it?
Scottish
No,
lads called Ewan, aren't
Now,
they?
let's have a synonym here.
Oh, dear.
Ewan is Scottish for what English name?
Oh, for the John, yes, I
John,
see.
oh,
Yes,
yes,
fair
that's
enough.
right. Yes, John.
So, deprived of the John, then, deprived of Ewan, gives you Sasquatch, and a Sasquatch is the Canadian form of the abominable snowman. In other words, in both cases, we're after what's called elsewhere
The Yeti.
a Yeti.
Or
The answer-
Wendigo.
The answer's a Yeti,
Or
or if you
Bigfoot,
like,
or
or
Bigfoot.
indigo. So, I think 6 marks to London. You did get there, all of it.
Thank you, Louis. Question now for the Midland team. Adrenal insufficiency might remind you of the spectator. Exophthalmic goiter might remind you of a poet. And paralysis agitans might remind you of a television performer. On the other hand, it might not. How?
Well, Gordon asks this question, which is straight from one of those dreadful books of anatomy one used to read as a student. Adrenal insufficiency might remind you of the spectator. Exophthalmic goiter might remind you of a poet. And paralysis agitans might remind you of a television performer. How is this?
There might be some chance of finding out what this is about. I feel a sort of horrible weight of duty on my shoulders, having a medical wife. If I don't get at least one of these, with all these references to moderately exotic medical conditions. If it's not too exotic, actually to start at the beginning, I know it's not the Round Britain Quiz way of doing things. One usually starts at the middle or possibly at the end.
The soft underbelly.
The soft underbelly, but for a change, let's start at the beginning. And adrenal insufficiency. The adrenals are, of course, glands, and there is a condition when they put out insufficient stuff, which is called Addison's disease.
Your wife has taught you well.
Yes, well, patchily. Or rather, she's taught me very well. I've learnt patchily. And, of course, Addison was that chap in the or around the turn of the 17th, early 18th century, who founded a mag called The Spectator. I've always thought it was a slightly double-edged honour to call diseases after people. And far be it for me to suggest, anyway, that any disease will be called after such a nice man as Michael Parkinson. But there is such a thing as Michael Parkinson, and there is such a thing as Parkinson's disease. And Parkinson's disease is, as far as I know, something remarkably like paralysis agitans, in that you sort of shake all over.
I was about to ask you whether you were thinking of Michael Parkinson as a poet or a television performer, but... yes.
I was thinking in terms of television performer.
Yes,
I have
right.
no doubt that his poetry is exquisite.
But private.
But private.
Yes. That leaves you
so
with
we've got Addison, we've got Parkinson, and we've also, I suppose, got Robert Graves.
Yes.
Who, if not the inventor of the exophthalmic goiter, was, I suppose, to some extent, at least, a successor to the honour originally evolved by Dr. Graves, who presumably invented the thing.
Yes, I'm sure he did.
Or discovered it, or
Yes.
identified it.
Mm. And you have 6 marks.
So Addison, Graves and Parkinson.
And 6 marks. No more to be said.
Thank you for the 6 marks, Gordon. I was beginning to wonder if there was a television performer called St. Vitus, but I'm sure there's not. Can I ask this one, London? And it's from R.S. Thorne, who asks you, what connects a massively endowed actress, the wife of John Middleton Murray, and the man who prosecuted Jacobite rebels?
I think R.S. Thorne should do a few more questions. What connects a massively endowed actress, John Middleton Murray's wife, and the man who prosecuted Jacobite rebels?
Well, I think perhaps the massively starting at the middle, which I firmly grasp, the massively endowed actress might be she of whom it was said twice around Jane is once around the park, the park, of course, being Mansfield Park, which gives us Jane Mansfield and Catherine Mansfield.
You could almost have 2.5 of that.
Yes.
And the man who prosecuted Jacobite rebels,
No. I always thought that was Judge Jeffreys. No, it wasn't, though, was it?
Judge Mansfield.
Sure. Yeah.
I think we could elevate him, could we not, from judge to the peerage.
Lord Mansfield.
So
Lord
let's call him Lord Mansfield, Catherine Mansfield, Jane Mansfield. Oh, startlingly well fielded there, London. 6 marks straight off.
Jane Mansfield, poor soul, always reminds me of the kind of girl of whom Betty Davis, that acerbic actress, said, "There goes the good time had by all." She always looks like that, poor thing.
It was Jane Mansfield, or was it Marilyn Monroe, of whom it was said that she had curves in places where other people didn't even have places.
Yes. Oh dear, what a shame. Isn't it? Fancy being known for just that.
Any more Mansfield anecdotes of any particular kind that can be broadcast decently at this time of day? No. Right. Question from the
Pass
Midlands.
on to Dolly Parton, huh?
You pass on to Dolly Parton.
Have you all finished? No. Right. What American angel... And here we go again. Back to Jane Mansfield. What American angel might have relatives in Bergamo?
Very brief one from Gordon, this. What American angel might have relatives in Bergamo?
Ah, well, I think... Am I not right in thinking that the Book of Mormon was dictated to... was he called John Smith? Could he not think of anything better than that? He was called John
Joseph,
Smith.
he thought
Joseph
of,
Smith,
yes.
that's right. Was dictated to Joseph by an angel called Moroni. And am I not further right in thinking that the painter Moroni, that admirable 16th century portraitist, also came from Bergamo?
That's right.
It has 4 admirable full-length portraits in the National Gallery, and a rather fetching pink one that was the Royal Academy in the Venice exhibition last year.
That's the trap. That's 6 marks. It's taken far too little time to answer the question. Tell me a bit more about the
I was
angel.
padding it out as far as I could.
No, a bit more about the angel Moroni, I think.
After Jane Mansfield is necessary. to pad
What
it
about
out.
gold plates?
That's right, yes. The angel Moroni dictated it all onto gold plates, didn't he? I see Peter nodding Yes, sagely.
Ah,
I mean, I thought tablets of stone were the things you dictated these things onto. I said
No,
gold
they-
plate sounds like a shoddy 20th century.
No,
One
no,
stone
no, I
didn't
mean-
have gold. I mean, Moses had already had stone.
Yes, there's a modern version.
That was the
and this
moment
is-
when Moses came down from the mountain and said, well, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that I've got them down to 10, and the bad news is that adultery is still in.
All right, I won't press you more about the angel Moroni. Actually, a better question about Moses, quite obviously. Moroni handed these gold plates over to Joseph Smith, who buried them, and then... oh no, Moroni had buried them himself in Cummer in New York State about the year 400, you see, and then Joseph Smith was told where to dig them up, and unhappily they got lost after that. when Mr. Smith had written
The best part about this programme is when the question masters tell you far more than you knew.
marvellous,
Yes.
Yes, well, you see, we work on it. Anyway, you've got 6 marks, don't complain.
Thanks very much, Gordon. We didn't, in fact, work on this. Mrs. Chris Stenhouse, a listener from Broome Park, Durham, worked on it, and I do hope she will now stop the ball rolling so fast. It has been for London so far. A Dane known for pelagic confrontation, crossing a Cheshire River, is fictively linked with a similar water source on the other side of England, which seems to be reaching the hard way for the stars. Another source accompanies gallinaceous gratitude in the USA. What's the plucky French link here?
Mrs. Stenhouse goes in for the long, involved question, doesn't she? Here we go. A Dane known for pelagic confrontation crossing a Cheshire River is fictively linked with a similar water source on the other side of England, which seems to be reaching the hard way for the stars. Another source accompanies gallinaceous gratitude in the USA. Then she says, what is the plucky French link?
Mrs. Stenhouse certainly knows her rivers, doesn't she? Which is more than I feel I do. This Dane, known for, what did you say, pelagic confrontation?
It's a way of describing a moment in his life, yes.
You don't mean as far back as Canute, do
I
you?
think at least as far back as that, Irene. Yes, I do.
Like Canute himself, yes.
Confronting the sea and saying,
Yes. Well, he said that he couldn't stop it. His courtiers insisted, but he could. Fictively, he says, linked with a similar water source. You mean another river on the
well,
other side?
you haven't, in point of fact, told me about this Dane crossing a Cheshire River. Could you do that,
Would
do you
that be
think?
the D?
No, since you've given me the chap's name.
Canute. Knutsford.
Knutsford it is indeed. Knutsford, yes.
Knutsford, yes.
Right, so Knutsford then. We know Knutsford, of course, readers, in some other way, do we not?
Oh, Cranford.
We do.
Yes. Cranford, which is a sort of fictitious Knutsford, written by Mrs. Gaskell.
Yes, that tells me about another source. And the gallinaceous gratitude is, I suppose, the Thanksgiving turkey, which you have with cranberry sauce.
On November, what is it, 30th or something?
Yes, we are brilliant with paranomasia here, but I do think we haven't got the middle point.
No, indeed. We've got...
Reaching the hard way for the stars, you mean?
Yes, I do indeed. Michael Redgrave and all that.
Oh, yes. Oh, dear, that film, 1940-odd. Reach for the Stars, it was called, wasn't it?
There was a book called that, but the film was not. It was called...
The Way to the
Way
Stars.
to the
The
Stars.
Way to the
Yes,
Stars, yes.
but the same idea, isn't it?
With Michael Redgrave, Gene Simmons in a tiny part.
And, of course, they were all going, were they not, per ardua ad somewhere, if you remember?
Astra.
Yes. Now, that's a badge for somebody,
Oh, it's the motto of the Royal Air Force, of course.
right?
Yes.
Now, if you can give me a source on the other side of
Cranford,
England...
Yes, Cranford is their training school, is it? No.
No, on the other side of England,
Well.
and another source.
Is it a river's name? Humber, Weir, Ouse, Tyne, one of those?
No, not a river, but somewhere that water springs up from, or can be collected from. He can't nudge any further than this.
So some kind of
Some kind
spring.
of reservoir, spring.
You did really brilliantly to start off with. You've got Knutsford and Cranford, and then with a great jump you've got Cranberry. But you haven't got Cranwell, which I thought you'd have got straight away.
Which is the RAF...
The RAF training school.
I thought it was Cranford.
Cran and well.
Cranwell.
And the plucky French link is, of course, that the French for pluck is cran. So let's give you, I think, at this point, I think you don't deserve more than 3 marks here,
Generous
London, you
in
know.
the
There was a lot of nudging and a lot of striving. 3 marks, London.
Thank you, Louis. I always preferred the version of Paradio ad Astra, which is Paradio ad Asbestos, which means blow you, Jack, I'm fireproof. Right.
There speaks the old saying.
Question for the Midlands. An American index, a partner-swapping frolic, and someone who's the object of common gossip are all objects of suburban emulation.
Gordon asks the Midland team, an American index, a partner-swapping frolic, and someone who's the object of common gossip are all subjects of suburban emulation. How is this?
Well, I detect a small gap in the middle, which I hope John Julius will fill. But basically, this is, of course, a question about Jesus College, Oxford,
Yes, that's right. Yes.
which has well-known Welsh connections. And in the old days, when there was such a thing as sort of public discipline in our universities, the proctors on the costing an undergraduate in the city would receive, when asked when they asked for his name in college, if he were on the board, they would receive the invariable answer, Jones of Jesus, because Jesus is full of Welshmen, and therefore there are always lots of Joneses there. And so it is, I think, with this question that the American index immediately rings a bell. It is not Standard and Poor, but it is the Dow Jones, which is the stock exchange index.
That will do nicely.
The partner-swapping frolic, which sounds deliciously indecent, but I fear is only a frolic on the dance floor.
Very decorous, too.
Nothing more horizontal than that. It is a Paul Jones. And then I come to a little gap. I wonder whether John Julius can come to the rescue.
I was afraid you were going to wonder that. Someone who is the object of common gossip. Jones Fair. Do we know this?
Oh, I'm sure you do.
I thought I knew a great many people who were objects of common gossip, but I can't think of anybody called Jones.
Like everyone's talking about them.
Is it one particular object, or?
Oh, I'm not going to give you any more than that.
He's a Jones. You're sincerely puzzled.
I mean, clearly, let's get the thing we do know out of the way, the objects of suburban emulation.
Oh, there, right, keeping up
the
with
Joneses we keep
Yes, that's
we
fine.
keep up with. That's clear.
We can keep up with the Joneses. It's that middle bit that's worrying me.
John Julius, the whole town's talking about the Jones boy? No?
When he's Franklin D. Roosevelt Jones, do you remember that wonderful song that Flanagan and Allen used to sing?
Gordon's too young for that, J.J.
Well, I know he is, but he's read a lot. He's a historian.
No, there's a song, actually, the first line of which is the whole town's talking about the Jones boy. Which I can't begin to sing. I thought that somebody around the table...
Well, I confess ignorance,
talking
oh dear.
about the Jones boys.
Yeah, genuine, one of those frequent, genuine gaps in our knowledge.
There you are.
Yes. Oh dear, I did hope I knew those sort of songs. But I don't know that
two and a
one.
half parts, 4 marks.
Thanks very much, Gordon. I wonder what London will do with this one. Why might you be excused, London team, for thinking that Flopsy Bunny and Mrs. Tiggywinkle were born from an unassuaged passion for imperial preference?
It's usually Louis who rebukes me for referring to middle-class childhood books. Never mind. Why might you be excused for thinking that Flopsy Bunny and Mrs. Tiggywinkle were born from an unassuaged passion for imperial preference?
Mrs. Tiggywinkle and the Flopsy Bunnies. Beatrix Potter wrote about them.
She did. A sheep-like woman, yes, but she did.
Imperial preference. That's something to do with money, isn't it? Like shares and consoles and things.
Oh, to do with a lot more than money, but we'll take it as money to start with. Goods, chattels, the whole lot.
Now, what's that got to do with Beatrix Potter?
Something about free trade. Beatrix Potter, Beatrice Webb. No.
You don't need to go any further, you see.
Beatrice Webb.
Beatrix for Beatrice.
I see.
Yes.
Passion, Passfield. They became Lord and Lady Passfield.
You fielded that very well, but it's not the
But
passion I want. Or rather, it's aside from that passion.
Unassuaged, you said, didn't you?
Well, we always take it so, Beatrice Webb being who she was. We take it was unassuaged. If you can think of whose idea, well, basically whose idea imperial preference was.
Some politician.
Well,
Some politician.
All kinds of
Yes.
imperialist
Like
politicians.
a Chancellor of the Exchequer of that time.
Like something of that sort.
Oh dear, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer about 19...
Chancellors of the Exchequer ran in this particular family, frankly.
Like Asquith's and...
That sort of family, but not quite.
Well, Churchill was Chancellor once.
Dear, we're not very
A
well up on
conservative anti-free trader who had an unassuaged or unrequited passion for Beatrix Webb. I don't know about this, I'm afraid.
Oh,
Or at
I
the
think
moment,
in
I
political circles it's probably common knowledge. It's Joe Chamberlain.
Oh, yeah.
Joseph Chamberlain, the apostle of imperial preference,
Yeah.
and of course father of Neville and Austin Chamberlain.
That's right.
Nuts
and bolts Chamberlain.
And the violent but, shall we say, unfulfilled passion was nourished on at least one side by by Beatrice Potter, later Beatrice Webb. You didn't really get there, I think, but you did certainly give me Beatrix Potter, and you got me Mrs. Sidney Webb in one form or another. Let's halve it. I think 3 marks at the most there, London.
Thank you, Louis. Right. If a gorilla in this state reminds you of English country dancing, why would a bureaucrat similarly attired recall a tasty snack, or an intimate meal put you in mind of a rabbit's home?
Now, Gordon is asking this question of the Midlands team. If a gorilla in this state reminds you of English country dancing, Why would a bureaucrat, similarly attired, recall a tasty snack, or an intimate meal put you in mind of a rabbit's home?
Well, my word. English country dancing. That must be Morris dancing. Morris is the only sort of...
Morris will do. I mean,
Will Morris do?
It could be gathering peace gods or stripping the willow, but none of those will do. Morris is far better.
Morris is better. So, okay, we got something.
You don't know what it is, but you got it.
No,
yeah.
is it a name?
Morris is the name.
It's
yes.
something to do with Morris dancing.
Actually, stripping the willow was not bad there, Gordon, if you think.
I chose it carefully. I wasn't going to comment on it myself, but there you are, since you have it. Was quite an apposite remark.
Stripped
no,
gorilla?
You don't strip the gorilla, yes. What happens if you strip a gorilla?
Oh,
It hasn't got too many clothes on in the first place.
Oppenheimer has scored, I think.
Oh,
just
Oppenheimer,
scored.
come. I mean, I was completely at sea until you began this banter, and as so often one banter suggests another. I think the bureaucrat similarly attired suggests a naked civil servant.
It does, doesn't it, my word?
Because a stripped gorilla and a naked civil servant, and there is a book, and it's by somebody called Morris, isn't it? Or
Yes, he lives up the road from you a
he
bit.
lives up the road from me. That's
used
right.
to,
Well, I
anyway.
wouldn't
The
wish
naked
to
civil servant.
flash my acquaintances on the radio. To
Flash is the
word.
Well, tell me about the stripped gorilla, come on. Just get that over with.
The stripped gorilla.
There's no book called The Stripped Gorilla that I'm aware of.
The naked ape.
The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris. Okay.
The naked
Civil
ape.
Servant.
The naked civil servant.
Tasty snack?
The naked lunch.
No, that's the intimate meal.
Yes, well, all right.
We're well into nakedness.
We're
here.
way-
Let's
well
just
into
sort
nakedness.
ourselves out.
You've
shall we?
got the book titles. You've got The Naked Ape, The Naked Civil Servant, and The Naked Lunch.
What about the tasty snack, though?
Well, that's
Oh, that is
naked lunch.
I see it's the same thing, yes.
No,
yes.
no, that's the author of The Naked Civil Servant. Please.
The Crisp.
That's right.
Ah, Quentin Crisp.
What about the author
course
of
it-
The Naked Lunch?
And it was Burroughs.
Where
William
rabbits-
Burroughs.
where rabbits live.
Where
That's
they?
right.
Oh, it's where
Differently
rabbits
spelled.
live.
Or no, or similarly
No, it
spelled.
is differently
No,
spelled, but never
differently
mind.
spelled. Yes, but
Sounds the same. This is a radio program.
Well, in our chaotic way, do we now have to answer it straight in a
know.
tidy way, or have we
Probably
got
only
enough?
got
No,
five and a
no,
half.
just be quiet and I'll tell the people what it's all about. It's about The Naked Ape by Desmond Morris, The Naked Civil Servant by Quentin Crisp, and The Naked Lunch by William Burroughs, and you have 6 marks, 1 for each bit.
Yes, thank you for the 6, Gordon. The chorus almost made it inaudible, but still, 6 marks, thank you. Let's see if London can deal with this very brief one. If Thor figures in Wisden, he'd have knocked up a couple of centuries by the 1st of January this year. How's that?
Well,
I'll just do it again. I'm not going to say how's that again, but there you are. If Thor figures in Wisden, he'd have knocked up a couple of centuries by the 1st of January this year.
I'm
Cricket,
clean
then.
bowled, yes.
Oh, is that?
Why should Thor figure in Wisden? In what sense does Thor score runs? And why has he scored 200 by the 1st of January this year?
Wisden is that cricket manual, isn't it? Sort of records of cricket scores and names. 1765. No, 1785, beg your pardon. Shows you what my arithmetic is like, isn't it? 1785.
The Times is also 200 years old this year.
Thor.
But why does Thor figure in the Times?
Is it literally a depiction of Thor in a masthead of a book or something, or paper?
No, it is a kind of allusion, mythological, shall we say.
Oh, the Thunderer.
the Thor is
Times.
the Times is the
yes,
Thunderer.
The
There we
Times, the
go.
Thunderer, yes.
Yes, I gave you that on a shovel, not a
Oh,
plate.
did you? I didn't know.
So the Times on the 1st of January this year achieved its bicentenary. It knocked up 2 centuries. So if Thor had figured in Wisden, he'd have knocked up 2 centuries. Well caught, sir, in a sort of way. I think 4 on that, and no more.
Yes.
Just 4.
Well, that does seem,
Not a boundary.
It does seem a little ungenerous, but never mind. We'll take it with what grace we can muster. Here's one for the Midlands. What connects a stocking-capped Amazon pirate, the co-star of Hellcats of the Navy, and the former capital of Lorraine?
Gordon wants to know what connects a stocking-capped Amazon pirate, the co-star of Hellcats of the Navy, and the former capital of Lorraine.
Well, former capital of Lorraine. The present capital of Lorraine, I think, is Metz, if I'm not much mistaken.
Yes, the former capital of Lorraine got moved away, really.
Before that, it was Nancy, wasn't it?
Oui, c'est ça.
Oui, c'est ça. Nancy. Was there a Hellcat of the Navy? Could easily have been called Nancy. Nancy Bell, Nancy... Now it would be,
Very specific Nancy.
a specific Nancy, but it is a Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy...
Gosh, which Nancy? I'm very bad on Nancy's.
What do you think Hellcats of the Navy is?
But it was a film, was it?
Right. Film actresses of the...
Well, I was trying to think of film actresses called Nancy.
She's gone up in the world since.
Nancy Reagan.
Yes.
Was she a film actress?
Yes.
My word.
Of course she was.
Was she?
She'd been overshadowed
What was she
by her
called?
husband.
What was her last name before she was Reagan?
Davis, Nancy Davis.
Nancy Davis.
And she co-starred with another chap, Ronald Reagan, some minor actor.
You mean this is where they met? It was like the Lunts.
I don't know whether they actually met on the set of Hellcats of the Navy.
Well, fairly like the Lunts.
The Naked Lunts. Oh no, sorry. Back to the last question.
Anyway, all right, Nancy Reagan.
All right, well, we got 2 out of the 3. We got 2 Nancy's. Now, this stocking-capped
Amazon
pirate. Nancy somebody else.
Yeah.
Can't be John Paul Jones. That was the previous question, wasn't it?
Yes, no, you can't go on with previous.
And he wasn't a Nancy.
You've got to drag yourself somehow.
And this is
into
Nancy in the
question
sense of an Amazon, a Nancy with one breast, or
No.
on the river Amazon. No, I see.
No. Well, Amazon, pirates, Amazon, pretty well known.
3. I see pirates on the Spanish Main. I don't sometimes see them up the Amazon.
Goes in with a Flopsy Bunny, really, on the same shelf.
It's Gordon's Russian reading that leads to this.
Swallows and Amazons,
Mhm.
Arthur Ransom, Nancy Ransom, Nancy...
It's a long time since you read it, I dare say.
Absolutely.
Nancy Blackett, Peggy Blackett, crew of the little dinghy Amazon.
I expect we've only got 5.5.
You've got 5 actually.
Oh, well.
Right, we'll take
You're still
5
winning
anyway.
though.
That's quite generous, Gordon. Thank you very much.
Okay, just for the sake of completeness, 3 Nancys. Nancy, the former capital of Lorraine, which you got without any trouble at all. Nancy Reagan, the co-star with Ronald as Nancy Davis in Hellcats of the Navy, made in 1957, film you ought to have seen and enjoyed, but never mind, you didn't. And Nancy Blackett, the heroine of a book which you ought to have read and enjoyed, which you clearly didn't, the Swallows and Amazons books by Arthur Ransom, when she was captain of the dinghy Amazon. Nevertheless, I shall give you 5 marks, which brings a total score of London 22 and the Midlands 27, which means that the Midlands in 6 weeks' time will go in with a 5-point lead in the very last programme of the series, which should make a very interesting bit of listening. In the meantime, from Peter Oppenheimer and John Julius Norwich, from Irene Thomas and Eric Korn in London, from Louis Allen and me, goodbye.
The question researcher was Karen Ossel, and the programme was produced by Alistair Wilson.